Buccaneers are now on the clock.
But right now we're too fast to slow down just yet. We're doing it our way, just acting our age. Just acting our age.
The Dolphins are now on the clock. The Vikings are now on the clock.
The Vikings just made their pick. Adam, what can you tell us about it?
Every running back that played against him hated the experience, as he netted the most tackles for a loss of any player this year and setting a new school record along the way. As Matt Miller put it, he has a knack for watching the ball, never being fooled by the play action, and getting to the ball carrier in the backfield. He had the ability to single-handedly shut down an opponent's rushing attack in school, but we'll see if that translates to the NFL.
The Saints are now on the clock.
I don't even worry about tomorrow. It might be some money, it might be all okay. I don't know where I'ma be tomorrow. Might be counting dough. I'll bet with your. Okay, your nose keep running and the money keep counting. Hey, I'ma keep ballin'. Hey, rock a pop, ballin'. Hey, carefree, I've been living carefree. Somewhere in the air, we can barely even breathe. Hey.
The Buccaneers are now on the clock.
I don't know. You say I'm living wrong, you ain't wrong, money long way. So think about it, it ain't nothing I don't know. All the money that I saw, I don't think I'm ever wrong. And I don't know where I go tomorrow.
The Chiefs are now on the clock.
I don't know what's gonna come tomorrow. And I don't know where I go tomorrow.
The Giants are now on the clock. The Jets are now on the clock.
The pick's been made. Let's go to Adam Schefter to hear more about the player.
This is a guy whose name has been mentioned as the top quarterback in the draft ever since that outstanding head-to-head performance against a fellow quarterback that came into the season with a lot of hype surrounding him. I was told by several organizations that the confidence shown in that game, along with his raw physical ability, had him shooting up their draft boards. Time will only tell if he develops into a franchise quarterback or not, but he certainly has established himself as a player to watch closely in the pre- and early season. I wouldn't be surprised to see him starting by week 5.
So promise that you'll catch me.
The Jaguars are now on the clock.
Dreams forever in my head, it seems. I finally know what they mean. I promise that one day you'll see in another world where you and me will show our
The Bills are now on the clock.
deliver me
The Lions are now on the clock.
and take me to
The Cardinals are now on the clock.
tell me where
The 49ers are now on the clock.
we can follow.
The Vikings are now on the clock.
Our very own Adam Schefter has more to say about this pick.
In a surprise move during the season, he left the team, citing personal reasons for the decision. From some of the reports I've heard, it sounds like he had some family issues that he really wanted to settle before the draft. His coach and teammates didn't hold any ill will against him and actually seemed supportive in his decision. He mentioned to several teams during the combine interviews that he felt a burden lifted off his shoulders, and now he can really focus on football. Despite missing a lot of his senior year, I like this kid a lot, and I think he'll do fine for this team.
The Saints are now on the clock.
Turn up, turn up, turn up, turn up. I'm breaking in. I'm at the pearly gates, but they won't let it in. I told the devil, I said, I ain't trying to sin, yeah. No, I ain't trying to sin, yeah. Pray to the Lord, Daddy, let me in.
The Saints have made their selection. For more about him, let's go to Adam Schefter.
There was some concern that he may not be a three-down linebacker in the NFL. He showed toughness and instinct in defending the run, but was pulled on a lot of obvious pass plays back in college. Well, according to Matt Miller's combine report, he looked like one of the faster linebackers in the pass drop and hip rotation drills. Enough so to move up in the rankings and to get drafted earlier than a lot of experts thought he would. We'll see if the team pulls him out in third and long situations, but I think he has the tools to become a three-down linebacker eventually.
I'm breaking in.
The Steelers are now on the clock.
Now that he's off the board, Adam, why don't you tell us all you got on Johnson?
Coming into the season, several scouts had him ranked as the top linebacker prospect entering the draft, and what followed was a flurry of media attention. The constant distractions looked to have taken their toll on him as he struggled to put together consecutive strong performances throughout the entire season. This inconsistency had him all over the experts' draft boards on a week-to-week basis. Even Todd McShay wasn't immune to the ranking roller coaster, having him anywhere from the number 2 to the number 10 linebacker available. This pick will be looked at as a bit of a gamble until he's able to prove he has the mentality it takes to turn in great performances on a week-to-week basis.
The Chargers are now on the clock. The 49ers are now on the clock. The Vikings are now on the clock.
All right, team is now off the clock. Adam Schefter, can you tell us about their newest player?
Long talked about as a top 3 defensive back prospect, his draft stock fell dramatically after a series of consecutive struggles late in the season against inferior wide receivers. Many speculated that these struggles were due to a series of nagging injuries, a theory which may have been validated by his strong performance at his pro day. I was able to talk with several GMs about him at the Combine, and they told me he possesses the raw physical skills needed to become a top-tier NFL defensive back. 3 skills in particular were mentioned by every GM I spoke to: exceptional physicality at the line of scrimmage, a nose for the ball, and better hands than most receivers they've seen and scouted. The reason for his collegiate struggles may forever be shrouded in mystery and will soon be forgotten if he's able to realize his full football potential.
Well, wait, looks like both war rooms are feverishly back on the phones. I think that means a trade is coming.
The Browns are now on the clock.
Well, if you're wondering what the delay is, I think we've got a trade coming here.
The Buccaneers are now on the clock. The Giants are now on the clock. The Packers are now on the clock. The Titans are now on the clock. The Buccaneers are now on the clock. The Broncos are now on the clock. The Browns are now on the clock. The Vikings are now on the clock.
Babe, show me what you like. Hey, I put money, I can match it for ya. I'm in this all white fit, looking like a...
The Titans are now on the clock.
Adam Obregon, the selection here. What do you know?
You know when an offensive lineman has a good game, you usually don't notice him. Well, you couldn't help but notice this kid during the All-Star game. Any pressure the quarterback got that day usually came directly from his area. He blocked the wrong defenders on several plays and got completely manhandled on others. Matt Miller gave him the benefit of the doubt, explaining to me that some linemen are slow to adapt to new schemes. If that's the case, then maybe with time, he can become a dependable blocker for the team. Sure, that's what the GM is hoping for, too.
But not tonight, though. Hey, I'm only here for a minute. Bet you want a girl to keep it independent. London, and I know you gotta like a girl that's disappealing. Get you caught up in the moment, then I'll get you in your feelings. Tell your boys that you gon' meet them later on. Both of us are so taxi, leave the meter on. First time you out in Cali, never tried no this strong, so you gon' have some stories to tell when you take it. Let me tell them one time, Snowy always showed you what it's like. Leave you sleepy like the call the umpire. Get you out and get you rolling, get you gotta go. I got a flight up in the morning on someday, someone tell me I'm somewhere, doing alright. Somewhere, oh my God, someone that's somebody that one day I'll be the love of my life, but not tonight though. He trying to catch me in my feelings, but he don't know that I'm the though. Shout out to my that can get it independent, and ain't looking for no love though. He trying to catch me in my feelings, but he don't know that I'm the though. He trying to stunt and give me drinks. I got the bottles in the section, and I promise to the base.
Turn up and make it sound to believe in. You know you got to turn up to make the heart go. I said you got to turn up and put your hand up and see that. You know you got to turn up to keep 'em begging for.
How come nobody's at the podium? That's because both teams are right now working on a trade.
Offer you my love, and I'll build a house of timber from the ground.
The Browns are now on the clock.
You needed it all your life. If you want it, baby, you can have it all. But then you better turn up and make it sound to believe it. You know you got to turn up to make my heart go. I said you better turn up and put your hand up and see that. You know you got to turn up to keep 'em begging for. Baby, you'll lose your
The Chiefs are now on the clock.
You'll make mistakes, and you're gonna learn to fight many days in so many ways.
The Giants are now on the clock. The Packers are now on the clock.
The Packers have just released their pick. Adam, what can you tell us about Bonner?
He's a durable lineman who set a team record for consecutive starts, never missing a game throughout a decorated 4-year college career. Ross Tucker praised his footwork leading up to the combine, where he did not disappoint, solidifying his position as the draft's top offensive line prospect. He has the potential to be the cornerstone of this offensive line for years to come and should provide consistent protection for a franchise quarterback. This is a great pick.
The Lions are now on the clock. The Cardinals are now on the clock. The 49ers are now on the clock. The Vikings are now on the clock. The Broncos are now on the clock. The Browns are now on the clock.
Now I've been in New York, Texas, Midwest, and it all reminds me of California, cause there's no place like California, California, ayy.
The Eagles are now on the clock.
Ayy. DMV all reminds me of California, cause there's no place like California. California, New York.
Let's go to Adam Schefter now, who's got more to say about the Dolphins' latest pick.
This kid is an explosive defensive talent. Sadly for fans of college football, his career came to an abrupt end after he suffered a grade 3 groin tear while attempting to make a tackle. After surgery, weeks of intensive, platelet-rich plasma therapy, and months of strength training of the affected area, he looked like his old self when he took the field for his pro day. Some scouts in attendance even felt as though he looked stronger and faster than before the injury. I'd expect him to get reps with the first-team defense come training camp, and don't be surprised to see him starting in Week 1.
The Chiefs are now on the clock. The Jaguars are now on the clock. The Seahawks are now on the clock. The Texans are now on the clock. The Vikings are now on the clock. The Redskins are now on the clock. The Redskins are now on the clock. The Steelers are now on the clock. The Jaguars are now on the clock. The Bills are now on the clock. The Panthers are now on the clock. The Bengals are now on the clock. The Chargers are now on the clock. The Dolphins are now on the clock. The Bengals are now on the clock. The Titans are now on the clock. The Saints are now on the clock.
Honestly, it's the same out in Richmond, Virginia or California, either state you can get it. I done seen everywhere from Russia to Delaware. Trust me, I'm well aware. Barcelona to Bel Air, Petty to the Detroit. Don't tell him he saw how heavily he balls. Every project, every seashore. And I ain't content trying to see more nomadic. I probably wind up alone. All it takes is a melody to remind me of home. I've been in New York, come on, Texas, yeah, Midwest, and it all reminds me of California, cause there's no place like California. California, A-A-T-L-M-I-A.
The Chiefs are now on the clock.
Reminds me of California, cause there's no place like California. California, California, no place like California. C-A all day. C-A B-N-V-N-I-A C-A.
The Giants are now on the clock. The Packers are now on the clock. The Rams are now on the clock. The Seahawks are now on the clock. The Lions are now on the clock. The Eagles are now on the clock. The Texans are now on the clock. The Cowboys are now on the clock. The Eagles are now on the clock. The Steelers are now on the clock. The Jaguars are now on the clock. The Cowboys are now on the clock. The Seahawks are now on the clock. The Bengals are now on the clock. The Chargers are now on the clock.